Hello, episode 9, part 9 of our corrupt justice system in the US and probably abroad, around the globe. So, today's episode is about a book I read years ago. The book, a real great book called the NYPD tapes, and this book it exposed corruption in the justice system. Um, it exposed how things are behind the scenes. Um, and I read that. It was very revealing. It was about stop and frisk. It was about falsifying evidence. It was about throwing away evidence. It was about ignoring crimes to keep the crime level low. Yeah, and this was regarding like real kind of crime, uh, like assault. Let's say that was like isolated assault, and again, it would be kept under wraps. And again, a police report would be either thrown out in the garbage or it would be tweaked. But I want to bring up the book because I read the truth there, but I didn't realize it. I didn't realize what I read. I hate myself for that. It was a pretty important book. It really blew the lid on the justice system. Now, it was regarding a specific city in the nation. It wasn't everywhere. However, what I read, it did unofficially reflect how it is around the nation. Meaning, for years, cops have been falsifying evidence, and they've been ruining the lives of many people for many decades. But I didn't realize what I read. People's lives would be ruined, and I never realized how they would feel, right? Or how they're feeling. They're probably still in prison right now. That's how bad it was. Let me sit on a bench. When I look back at the book I read and the lives that have been ruined from cops falsifying evidence, I look back at the families who suffered, on the people who were arrested, the families who suffered over that, and obviously the person who got arrested, wrongfully arrested, by the way, in prison for years, simply because the cop had to finish his case or her case, so they had to do whatever it took. They had to get somebody. It didn't matter if it was the wrong person, they would do whatever it took back in the day. That's scary, isn't it, though? It's a scary thought how a person's life is purposely ruined because cops are greedy, they're corrupt. But yet, I read all this, I hear about this, and I still didn't realize it. Hate me for that. But I don't just think about the families of those who were arrested over being set up. I think of the families of the cops. Their lives are fine, right? The cops are retired now. They have their pensions. They support their families going to college. They have these nice lives. Their families have their own families, but yet the families that you screwed over to fill your quota, to make sure you finish your case, their families had suffered, and they're just trying to get by, right? Because we live in a dictatorship. I look back and I think of that. A cop has a decent life because he did his job. He's filling quotas. He's finishing cases. He's setting up people who didn't commit the crime. And the families of these cops, their lives are fine, right? But then the people you set up for years, again, they're in jail or prison. And the families of these people who are in prison, they're suffering because their loved one is in prison. What a shame. It took me to learn the hard way that we live in a police state, pretty much. It took me to learn the hard way, and I should have realized it when I read the book. Yeah. So that's how powerful law enforcement is. That's how powerful they've always been. We never should have lived in a police state. It never should have been like this. In a future video, I'm going to touch on what real crimes are. But it never should have been this abusive. Alright, I guess I'm going to wrap it up. The book I read, the NYPD tapes. I guess the title of the book is self-explanatory as to the area of the country that I read about. But again, unofficially, it's a reflection of law enforcement throughout the country. Man, what a shame. Can you imagine if society found out the truth on what cops were corrupt? Man, that'd be great. But here's the thing. It's not only falsifying evidence or planting evidence to get someone who's innocent, but to get whoever to complete a case. It's not just about finishing a case, it's about all the laws and regulations we have. Remember, cops are paid to enforce all the laws and all the regulations. So, we live in a corrupt society because of the amount of laws we have. So meaning, as I've said before, some laws should not be law. Some regulations should not be a regulation. Certain topics or subjects, it's okay to regulate something, but it shouldn't be a law, like marijuana or meth, which I've talked about already, I know. But these are things you should regulate. It's not a real crime. Certain things like the jaywalking I mentioned in a video before, these are not real crimes. But because we live in a police state, everything is a real crime. Alright, didn't know it was going to be at least 10 minutes, which it is. This has been episode 9. Stay tuned for next episode 10. Alright. Whoever watched this, thank you.